Okay, we'll open the Senate Finance Committee, and our first order of business, Senator Waters, I'll let you introduce the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senator David Waters, District 4, to introduce Amendment 234S on Senate Bill 239. We heard a good deal about this last week, so I will be very brief. The amendment proposes the sum of $400,000 to cover the environmental review for threatened and endangered species, and it also envisions $2 million to cover the deficit previously instituted salary increases. To just provide a little more information about this, we had a lot of conversation in Energy and Natural Resources on a bill that was dealing with this review by DES and then Fish and Game of proposals that might relate to threatened and endangered species and the difficulty of funding for these positions. Had some conversation with Senator Lang after our hearing last week about possibilities of having some kind of designated fee structure to support the work of the Fish and Game Department, and had some conversation with DES and others about that. I will say on this first part here, we are also waiting the governor's budget, which may propose some reorganization and some changes to environmental regulation, which may relate to this issue. So there are some things in the work and under discussion that I think might be addressed better when the governor's budget comes out. On the sum for the previous instituted salary increases, there was a question asked last week about whether this is a prioritized need, and I have some more information about that I think Colonel Jordan can present when he comes up about, you know, how it was that it was or was not intended to be one of the prioritized needs related to promises that have been, statements that have been made about the budget development during the summer. I would say, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, the bottom line here is I think that what emerged from our very extensive study committee over the last summer were emerging issues about the sustainability of the department. And so this bill meant to accord basically with the highly considered needs of the Fish and Game Department, which it proposed in its budget to the governor, and had conversation with the House about on these two items being in HB 2. So that's why I brought them here. My hope is that we can use this bill as a kind of a placeholder for our consideration when we get the House budget as to what needs to be and can be done for Fish and Game. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions from senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, come on up. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colonel, we're going to lead the
He
discussion.
wants to come with you, huh?
Yeah,
All right.
he's escorting me.
I think,
No, it's the other way around. I'm escorting him.
I don't know that I've seen you here before,
No.
you know, recently, but I see him quite often.
Yep,
So-
environmental review is.
This kind of surprised both of us, sir, so thanks for having us today, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. So I certainly am not an expert on our finances at New Hampshire Fish and Game, other than to say that we're, as you all know, we struggle with this year after year. I do know, one thing I do know is that the raises, when originally were given to us by Governor Sununu, the 12, I believe it was 12%. He also gave us, at that time, general fund money to cover those expenses because we didn't have that kind of funding to cover those raises. We were led to, my former director indicated to me that we were going to get that every year. And so we didn't put that in our prioritized budget needs for this year and then found out we were not going to get it. And so that was one of the issues that came up this summer when we talked at the funding study committee throughout the summer. That was one of our concerns. So when the senator put that in this amendment, that certainly would address our immediate need.
Additional questions from the committee? Mr. Sullivan, anything to add to all of that?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I'm here representing the environmental review as that's been in the amendment, and I can answer any questions that the committee might have about that or the need.
Senator Rosenwald.
So, 2 years ago, I think we put the $10 million, or the 10% raise in for your department and general funds. Are you able to cover that part this year without having to have made any service cuts?
Do you want to speak to that?
Yes. My business supervisor told me that we would not be able to make that if we didn't get additional funding. So they were planning on that being given to us through general funds. But when we found out that wasn't going to happen, that would result in some loss of staff if we couldn't cover that.
Follow up?
So if you can't cover the previous raise, you will be cutting services.
Yes, ma'am. Staff, we
Staff.
would have to cut staff, yes, yes. Yeah.
And are you able to cover that?
I don't know that we're going to be able to this year. She tried that. We took all of the money for this next budget. We've taken all of the money out of the unrestricted fish and game fund to try and cover that. But I don't think that we're going to make it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Additional questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you
Thank you
both
very
very much. Meredith, is that right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senators. Meredith Hatfield for the Nature Conservancy. I did speak to this last week, so I won't repeat myself. I'll just reiterate our strong support for Fish and Game and the many really important duties that they perform for our state, and also express our willingness to work on a creative solution, either through legislation like this or through the forthcoming state budget as proposed by the governor. Thank you.
Okay, questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. And Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Matt Leahy. I'm the Public Policy Director for the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forest. We support the amendment before you, both items in there. And I'll just say briefly, the mission and responsibilities of of Fish and Game, they really go to the heart of, really what makes New Hampshire a unique place. Our natural resources, wildlife diversity, outdoor recreation, all those items are, again, go to the heart of New Hampshire, and the amendment will help the department carry out these responsibilities. So we support it.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is the last name on the list. I don't know if anybody's signed up since they brought the list to me. I don't see anybody shaking their head. Sign-ups online. The original bill had 6 in support, 2 opposed. The amendment that we just heard, there were no additional people that signed up online, and everyone who did sign up spoke. So with that, we'll close the public hearing and open the next one in just a minute. Come on up, Senator. With that, we will open the next hearing, Senate Bill 238. We have the prime sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, honorable members. Senator Long represented District 20, City of Manchester. Adverse Childhood Experience, or what's often referred to as ACEs, Prevention and Treatment Program in New Hampshire, was established in 2022 from Senate Bill 444. The development was for a pilot program that ends July 1st, 2025. Senate Bill 238 is an attempt to extend that very successful program through 2026 and 2027. And I know the bill doesn't say this, but with speaking to the proponents, it's at $150,000 we're requesting per year. And that is mainly for training for people that are doing the work. Children from birth to 6 years old are the most vulnerable members of society in terms of risk for maltreatment and with regard biological sensitivity for adverse exposure. Research shows that unaddressed traumatic experience and stress during the first years of life, called adverse childhood experiences, can impact the child's brain development, educational achievements, and future economic productivity. Child-parent psychotherapy is an evidence-based therapy for caregivers with children from birth to 6 years old. CPP has emerged as the most frequently employed model in the state, largely due to CPP's effectiveness with traumatized children and their caregivers. There's two people that are here that'll testify that on a daily basis work this program, and the success rates has been a large percentage. So, if
Questions from
questions?
senators? Seeing none, I think you're getting off easy today, you know?
I think so.
All right. Let's see. All right, Marty? Casa? Oh, he didn't say he wanted to speak. Okay. CTRDC, I got a couple people.
I think Dr. Yackley should go first, that's okay, and then I'll go after her.
All right, well, why don't you both come up at the same time?
Oh, that'd be good too.
We got two chairs.
We can sit by each other. We can. Okay, so
Just-
first of all, you should have a summary that came around.
All right, introduce your names first, and
Okay.
then we'll,
Okay.
he's distributing stuff right now,
Okay,
so.
thank you. All right, so I am Deli Champagne, and I am the chair of the Board of Directors of the Center for Trauma Responsive Practice Change. Hello, my name is Dr. Cassie Yackley. Scoot up. I'm a licensed psychologist with a little over 30 years of experience working with child maltreatment.
Okay. And we are being given the two handouts right now, so go ahead with your testimony. Don't read your testimony, summarize it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am grateful I'm here to strongly support the current bill. Child-parent psychotherapy has spent the last decade building a robust capacity for mental health providers to work with young children ages 0 to 6 and their caregivers in New Hampshire. That network of providers has been supported and seen over 1,000 children since its inception in the last 6 years. It has a gold standard evidence-based for reducing child maltreatment by 65%. It changes both child traumatic symptoms in terms of their behaviors and challenges with engaging in school readiness, but also reduces caregiver depression and caregiver trauma symptoms so that they can successfully parent their child. CPP is the only robust evidence-based practice for children 0 to 6 in the state at the current time. And if folks aren't aware, approximately 50% of maltreatment victims are under the age of 5 in our state. So it is a vital resource. Most importantly, as someone who has worked an entire lifetime now with multi-generational trauma, our capacity to affect long-term change and reduce long-term cost associated with involvement in mental health and other systems is key to where I believe we're headed as a state. Thank you.
Okay. So I've devoted my adult life to be an advocate for children. In my 20s, in the 90s, pre-motherhood, I was a middle school social studies teacher. And during my first year of teaching, my principal called me to the office and he said, "You are doing things in your classroom that my 20-year veterans still aren't doing." He said, "I'm going to nominate you for a National Teaching Award." I won that teaching award. I was in Newsweek magazine. I was the pride of New Hampshire that year. And then I had my son, Peter. My son, Peter, was born on the autism spectrum with schizophrenia. And we had a very challenging life. So I never went back into the classroom full time. I had to be an advocate for my son. Because as you know, in the 90s, we did not have a lot of good services in place for kids with mental health challenges. We are getting better, right? We are growing that system. I decided 7 years ago when my son was 23 and doing well, I could go back to work full time. So I got a job where I could become an advocate. And I was part of Senate Bill 14, the System of Care bill that transformed the way we're going to serve kids in this state, right? One of the things that we did was we said, we have to start working upstream. We have to start really looking at prevention and early intervention, right? That's going to save us some money. That's going to save us in the long run. So kids don't need special education. They're not going to go into the JJ system. They're not going to use up our valuable resources. So we have to, as a society, really focus on getting kids when they're younger. Currently, I'm in the child protection system now. And most of my families have young children. My families are addicted to fentanyl. They have lots of trauma. And the children need intensive treatment, the children and families. Child-parent psychotherapy provides that. It is evidence-based. And I know Dr. Yackley would never brag about herself, but she was invited to speak in Dublin, Ireland, because the work we're doing in New Hampshire is so impactful. CPP is the best evidence-based practice we have to support kids, but we need to have an infrastructure in place so that our clinicians can get trained and continue to get staff development. So we put an amendment together. We're asking for $150,000 for the next 2 years per year so that we can continue to grow this evidence-based practice and help these families. Thank you.
Okay, questions from the senators? Go ahead.
I'm a little confused because this replace all amendment, I think I'm missing a page.
Oh.
Because at the bottom of page 2, it looks like it's going to talk about the program. But then I don't see anything else.
So did you get the amendment, the actual amendment?
No, well, we have language, which has a lot of findings,
Yeah.
but nothing about the program.
Oh. Senator Long?
So, I mean, is it 150,000 a year you're looking for?
Yes, per year, for
the
2 years.
CPP?
And it's not
Hold
for
on
a
for
pilot.
second. Senator Long, did you submit the amendment?
I didn't have an amendment made. I found this, I found out about this too late to get an amendment.
Okay, for those that are listening online, Senator Long said that he did not get the amendment made yet. So that there's, really is no amendment, it would be forthcoming. Okay,
I had a second question, if I could.
go ahead.
Have the Family Resource Centers received any money from the opioid abatement funds, and if so, how much?
I got one.
You know that?
CPP, I don't know the answer
Not
to
for
that.
CPP, but just to the FRCs.
I do not work for the FRCs. CPP is a separate program. I understand that was under the same umbrella, and I can't speak to whether they received that or not. I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can't either. I don't know.
Right.
All right, seeing no additional questions, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
The fiscal note on the bill says it's 120,000, 1 million 200,000 and then 1,700,000.
Scratch that. That was initially written across the street, very incorrect. So we have submitted, or we will be submitting an amendment that reflects what the real ask is. So I'm sorry about that.
All right. Sam Hawkins? Second.
I'll be quick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the opportunity to testify today. For the record, my name is Sam Hawkins. I am the Public Policy Assistant at NAMI, New Hampshire. We are a nonprofit grassroots organization dedicated to improving the lives of all people impacted by mental illness and suicide. And I come before you today to ask you to support this bill. As an organization, we strongly believe that early intervention, prevention, and treatment is essential to promoting good mental health across the lifespan. We further know that when we connect families with the resources they need before a situation becomes a crisis, we can decrease utilization of costly higher levels of care or interactions with the justice system, which could potentially have cost savings for the state. As such, we think any money spent on bolstering community resources and the early connection to those resources is money well spent, and we urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Questions? Seeing none, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. I had somebody else that didn't sign up that wants to speak.
Sorry about that.
You could either come get this sheet and have her sign in, or get another one for her to sign in on.
I thought I missed it when I got here a moment late, so sorry I didn't sign in.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Jenny O'Higgins. I'm the Legislative Liaison for Behavioral Health at DHHS. So the fiscal note worksheet was just based on the bill as written. So I'm hearing today that it sounds like there'll be an amendment introduced where there'd be a significant change in the amount of funding. So we would have to, do that analysis again, although we did not anticipate any funding or any need for positions or anything like that. The bill is straightforward in terms of an appropriation sort of into the department and back out, where there was one component of the bill that spoke specifically to that CPP program that you just heard so much about and the importance of that program in terms of for those youth with complex trauma and how well that works to keep them out of higher levels of care. And that piece has been implemented since the Senate bill that Senator Long mentioned in 2022. And that pilot program has been ongoing, but does end on June 30th of 25. And the second component in this bill is funding for the family resource centers. And so we had that also in the fiscal note. Again, we already have contracts with the family resource centers, as well as a facilitating organization contract that helps with technical assistance and their designation for quality. And so we would be able to continue and expand that work as well. The family resource centers really work as a community hub and keep vulnerable families well connected to many services across New Hampshire. The funding there would be, to continue that programming. And as far as I know, there have been no opioid abatement funds to the family resource centers, just to answer that question. And if you have any other
Questions from the
questions.
senators? Senator Lyon?
So I'm looking at the Senate bill, which was Senate Bill 444 in 2022 that created this pilot program. And there was $1 million associated with the FRCs. Was that spent? Is that still unspent? Was that going to lapse? What is the uptake and use of that cash?
Yep, that was spent. So both of these programs have integrated the previous funds from that 2022, both for the ACEs program and the Family Resource Centers programs, and have been able to serve people throughout that time. So that Family Resource Center, the current facilitating organization contract expires on June 30th of 25. And the money for the pilot program for the child parent psychotherapy also expires on June 30th of 25.
Follow?
Do we have any data on what it did, other than we just wrote a check to this organization who asked for a contract?
We do.
we have
So
any
child
data?
parent psychotherapy has seen over 1,000 clients. I do have details of who they have served and those parent-child dyads. So since 2020, the child parent psychotherapy has been provided to at least 724 child caregiver dyads. And so, 242 in 2024. So I have, can get you all kinds of data on their outcomes as well. As you heard from previous testimony, it's one of the really critical programs for those youth who have really complex trauma.
Again,
One more.
Yeah, if I can have that data, I'm interested in seeing what the efficacy of these programs and how they've been used. Both, again, broken up in two different pieces, like it's here, right? We have the $700,000 relative to the psychotherapy services, and then we have the $1 million relative to the FRCs, and that's how in the original bill it was also segmented that way. So I'm interested in both how that $700,000, how many kids do we serve, that kind of thing, and then in the $1 million, there was no real. In the bill, it says may be used to better serve families. I don't know what that means, other than the better serve families, but I'd like to know how that money was spent, the $1 million, and how many families it serviced, and where it was dispersed throughout the state. I know like town of Tilton has an FRC in downtown, but I'd like to know where the money was distributed and how it was spent, so before we start funding another program.
Of course. So the Family Resource Centers they've utilized that funding both for their quality designation. 14 of the 16 FRCs across New Hampshire have achieved the FRC quality designation, implementing national standards for family strengthening and support. And the other 2 FRCs are actively working to obtain that quality designation. They've also have been able, those 16 Family Resource Centers have supported over 7,000 families. And I have lots and lots of bullet points for you, so happy to provide them.
Data. I'm interested in, again, how this $1 million, FRCs, big picture already in place before this, and we added $1 million. How did that serve them? What was it spent on? What expansion of services were utilized with this new funding?
Sure.
You can't do that, ma'am.
So there's just one other thing I wanted to mention from the department is a technical defect with the language, that we would just ask that in the section around the FRCs that we could remove that the allocation go directly to the facilitating organization. We do have direct contracts with the FRCs, and it would reduce sort of the administrative burden, allow more funding to go directly to the FRCs instead of the stop with the FO and then subcontracts. We don't allow subcontracting in the current FO contract, so that would just be a complication.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Senator Long, I think you need to pick a committee member to work with on an amendment and do that. It needs to be done toot sweet. It's just,
Is that an official word?
Hey, it's the best one I've got. If you want it considered, quickly. All right, that's the last person that I have on my list for that bill. There were 13 additional people who signed up online in support, 4 opposed. And with that, we'll close this public hearing and move on to the next one. Senator Braveheart, you can move up forward if you'd like.
Computer. I'm ready whenever you are.
Not yet.
I will do as I'm told.
I may have the big chair, but that's the big boss.
I hear you. I got 2 upstairs, 3.
All right, Senator Braveheart, I hear you're here to introduce Senate Bill 241.
I am. Thank you. And for the record, I am Senator Kevin Avard, and I am the prime sponsor of SB 241. And we have some wonderful co-sponsors on the bill as well. I want to thank them for being part of it. This bill basically establishes and makes an appropriation to the Hampton Beach State Park Pier Fund, a dedicated fund to be administered by the Department of Natural and cultural resources for the purposes of siting, permitting, design, and construction of a public pier at Hampton Beach. And, before I got here, just this week alone, and actually last week, I met with some folks from Nashua up in the chambers. And they said, Senator, what is one of the most important bills that you have this year? And I said, I have one. How many of you would like to see a pier at Hampton Beach? And all 30 of them said, I love the idea. And then just a few minutes ago, I was up in my office and some folks from a totally different part of the state, I mentioned it to them. And I said, this is my bill, and I'd like to see a pier at Hampton Beach. And almost like they heard the same song, I could hear them all go, what a wonderful idea. And I agree with them. It is a wonderful idea. Because from time to time, if you go to Hampton Beach and you go on the boardwalk, you'll see a handful of individuals that are strolling around, but not like the majority of the people. They're in a wheelchair. And they can't go touch the water like we can if you're able to. And so I'm asking for an appropriation for the construction of a pier, not for any cruise ships at all. It is specifically for individuals, aged, handicapped, disabled, or able-bodied, to be able to traverse out approximately about 500 feet out into the water so that they can enjoy the ocean just like we can. If you want to wheel out there and sit out there and get the spray of that water on your face or catch a striper, you'll be able to do so. New Hampshire doesn't have a pier. Old Orchard Beach has a pier, but New Hampshire doesn't. And if you go all the way down our seacoast, you'll find that just about every state has a pier going out into the ocean. Myrtle Beach, Florida, you name it. I think this would be a revenue-generating investment. But not only are we investing in a potential rooms and meals advancement up the road, I think that our disability communities, DD communities, will be able to enjoy what we take for granted so often. If you look at the financial end of this part, we did do a study on this in the past, and there were a number of options. There was an $18, $12 million, and $24 million price tag on building a pier. I'm asking you to change that. I'm asking for $2 million for the permitting and allow the pier to be funded through grants and donations. This sets up the fund to allow that to happen. And I'm only asking the state to participate in just the permitting process of this. And I can tell you hundreds of people that I've talked to in the past why they think it's a good idea. I know that you're going to see a lot of bills this year, which is spending a ton of money. And I'm not so sure it's going to generate revenue. I believe the pier will. Somebody said, oh, we can put a Ferris wheel on it. No, I don't think that's what this is for. What it is for is access, so individuals can go out about 500 feet out into the water and catch a fish or get the spray on their face and enjoy, walk your dog, take a date out. How many people go to the Nubble? A lot of people. I mean, it's one of the most photographed areas. This will make a draw to New Hampshire, I believe, and I think it'll be a revenue source. And so that it's nothing more complicated than that. Change the fiscal note to $2 million to allow the permitting, and let's see if we can get some grants. If we can't get enough grants within a couple of years, then the money just goes back into the general fund, and we would try another option. So with that, I'll end my testimony.
Thank you, Senator. And as you know, that we can't change the fiscal note, you'd have to change the bill, which would change the fiscal note estimated by the the reviewers. Senator Rosenwald, I saw your hand first.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of questions, if I could. I remember last time you brought this bill in, I read the peer commission study report. And they did talk about 1,000-foot pier with a cruise ship terminal, space for festivals and restaurants, concessions. And I see revenue there. But how much revenue do you predict we really would generate from people getting maybe, do you have to get a saltwater fishing license? No? He says yes. All right, but so, I mean, how is it really a revenue generator? I'm totally with you on the idea that our public spaces should be acceptable to everyone, but I don't understand the revenue.
Well, I don't have revenue figures. I do know that Old Orchard Beach generates a lot. And yeah, I don't think this is the first and primary function of this pier is to allow individuals that are in the DD community and those that are have suffered some form of disability or are aged and cannot traverse the beach. That's the primary function. And this will draw more of those individuals to the area, in which I'm just as a layman, I believe that it'll extend the season. It'll generate more bait and tackle, and I don't want it to be primarily looked at as a revenue source. I do believe that will be a byproduct of this, and I believe that it'll attract people to our area, rooms and meals across the board. So I don't want to get distracted because of the potential of restaurants or whatever. It's primary function. I don't want to say exclusively, but for those in that community, and so that they can access. And I think it'll be a big draw for the state of New Hampshire.
Good, can I ask?
Follow up?
Thank you. So also, when you brought this bill before, we heard from Fish and Game that that Hampton Beach itself was the prime nesting spot, I guess, for 2 different species of endangered birds. And that they further had a concern that seals with their babies would come in for shelter. And they were concerned that the mother seals would abandon the babies and the babies would be orphaned and die. Do you have concerns?
I have no
about that?
concerns on that level. I think if it can be done at Old Orchard Beach, it can be done here. And I saw a dead seal at Salisbury a couple of years back. And I also saw an old lady in a wheelchair with these big balloon wheelchairs, big balloons on the wheelchair, and 3 full-grown men pushing this lady down so that she can go to the water. And it was not a pretty sight for them to try to push her back, even though they had that blue carpet on the beach. And I just think, as much as you try, there's nothing that's going to beat a pier for allowing that individual to go out into the water like the rest of us can, or be above it. It is 1,000 feet, but it's about 500 feet to the shoreline, so it only goes out about 500 feet. And there's enough room from where the state park, where the restrooms are, where you can wheel out right from that spot to the water's edge, another 500 feet out. And I just think there needs to be room for the horses, because I understand that there are horses that traverse that area, and that is one of their main areas. And so there'd be enough room for people to wheel out and enough room for the horses to traverse that area. It wouldn't impact the birds on both sides. It'll go right through that path. Enough for wheelchairs, and then it can expand as soon as it goes out. It's a great idea.
One more, if I could.
One more.
Thank you. Fish and Game, Natural and Cultural Resources told us they had wide tire wheelchairs and some sort of hard surface to get people down to the water already. But is that not what you're looking for? You want people to be out beyond the
Yeah,
shore.
and then you can drop a line instead of going onto the jetty and falling off and getting hurt and having emergency services come get you, which they do every year. This will be an alternative to that, and then you can say, no more jetty, and that'll probably save us some money there. But I've watched search and rescue come a number of times that I've been there. Maybe you can, but it says stay off the rocks, but people go on it anyway. This is a safer approach, and at the end of the pier, you could probably put sea-doos on the end of it, so that in case somebody's drowning, they can, instead of somebody swimming out there, they can launch right from the pier. There are a lot of great advantages of having that, but I do think for the people that can't get there and do the things that we are doing, I think this is a wonderful opportunity. And if I need to make an amendment to change the amount and then just ask for grants, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Lang.
Thank you, Senator Gregg. Thank you, Senator, for bringing the bill forward. So I think you're okay in the first section because we talk about establishing the fund and it's allowed to accept grants in the first section. I think it's section 3 where we have some amending to do.
Yeah.
We are asking for 12 million, now you want 2 million for the purpose of getting permitting done while they're receiving grants. And then you're ultimately saying you also want a sunset clause in here that says, look, after 10 years, if this hasn't moved forward, return any funds, close out the project. Is that
Thank you for the suggestion.
great? I'll be happy to work with you on that.
Thank you.
amendment.
Additional questions? Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let me just start on that last point. If it's $2 million for permitting, don't you have to have a plan for a site and a construction before you seek permitting?
I think we did, what is it? I forgot the name. What was it? Was it this?
Hampton Beach New Pier feasibility study.
Thank you. We did do a feasibility study. And I think it is in the feasibility study, different plans.
So you think that the feasibility study would be enough to take to DES and Fish and Game to apply for a permit
Sure.
for construction? Okay.
We spent $150,000 on it.
So my main question has to do is, are you familiar with the requirement in state statute that each 5 years we have the science technical and advisory panel meets to establish the anticipated sea level rise and storm surge for the coastal area, by which DOT and other organizations are bound to accommodate in any construction?
Somebody was talking to me about that a little earlier. But last I checked, Plymouth Rock is still there, and you can still visit Plymouth Rock. So I'm not so sure. If it's going to go up 5 feet, we build the pier a little bit bigger.
So, and I guess what I'd say, are you aware that the last one anticipated 1.5 to 3 feet of sea level rise by 2100? And this year, it's the 5 years for the next iteration of it. It's been done twice before. And our neighbors to the north and south have both, are anticipating in their statute a foot in the next 10 years and then 3 to 5 feet by 2100. So if New Hampshire ends up with something like that, which I think is quite likely because of the acceleration of tidal gauges showing the sea level rise, we've seen it at the Sunny Day flooding and so on down at Hampton Beach, that, let alone the pier, but that where it would come to land, that parking there, access, maybe even the road itself, will not be viable within a few decades, within the lifespan of such a bridge, so that the bridge might be there, but there'd be no access to it because there's no road and no parking. So how should we justify spending money on something when it may very much contravene other statute that says we have to recognize what the sea level rise is going to do to the coast.
Well, I'm not so sure I agree with the premise of it going up 5 feet, but if that's the case, then they shouldn't be building houses all from Salisbury all the way up to the coast. And if the road's gonna be being wiped out, then the bridge that's being built is kind of a waste of money too.
Well, I think I mentioned, isn't it the case that the bridge was
But the
elevated
road won't be there
about
for the
5
bridge.
feet to accommodate for
Right,
for
but
that.
the road won't be there for the bridge, so there'll be a nice bridge, but there won't be a road to get there.
I think that we're getting a
Yeah.
little far
I'm
from
done.
the spirit of
I'm
the
done,
bill.
Mr. Chairman, I'm done.
Yeah,
So-
thank you.
I couldn't bring you back.
Reel me in.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I did have that conversation with an individual not too long ago, and I highly respect the individual. I might be on the opposite side of that thought, but again.
We're gonna move on from that subject. Are there
on-
any other questions for Senator Avard?
And I thank you all.
And you have a promise from Senator Lang to work with you. All right,
Thank you.
we'll move on to the next person, and that's Brian Wilson.
What a beautiful beach name.
And he's smiling, see? Wouldn't it be nice?
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Brian Wilson. I am the director of the Division of Parks and Recreation, not a member of the Beach Boys. Please accept this testimony on behalf of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, Division of Parks and Recreation regarding SB 241 relative to the construction of a public pier at Hampton Beach and making an appropriation therefore. The Division of Parks and Recreation.
Just in front of you are the Senate rules. And one of the things in the Senate rules is that we would like you to talk to us and not read, because we are capable of reading.
Sure, great. I use that to try to keep me on point so I don't drift off too far. But
I'll do that.
So the pier has been come up for a few sessions now. As folks know, first there was a $150,000 study that was commissioned relative to the feasibility of the pier. Last year, it came back up and there was $150,000 appropriation relative to accessibility improvement studies at Hampton Beach State Park. Over the course of the last 12 months, our Division of Parks and Recs ran a robust committee of stakeholders across the seacoast and further on the accessibility improvement study. That also contemplated where a pier would fit into the matrix of recommended improvements. That study is available. You can find a link to it on our website, or I'd be happy to send it directly to this committee, the emails if they would prefer that. You should, I believe certain members of the committee had already received a copy of that.
If you know where it is on the list, please tell us.
Okay. So through that assessment, there were many findings that came about that found low cost and no cost accessibility improvements that can happen throughout Hampton Beach State Park. The pier idea itself is categorized in an innovative high cost category, similar to reconstruction of staircases, converting them to ramps, and some other things like that. A lot of the findings and community input that we got relative to the accessibility study process was by and large relation to parking. We are currently working very closely with the Department of Transportation as they are getting close to finalizing their Ocean Boulevard master plan as part of the 10-year transportation improvement budget. Right now we share with DOT. A lot of the parking is actually owned by DOT and under management of DNCR. So as they realign Ocean Boulevard, that will be reconfiguring the majority of the parking at Hampton Beach. So we look at that as an opportunity to create a lot of new access points and make sure that findings that came out of this accessibility study are incorporated to the extent they can into that transportation project. Just as provided in our testimony in 2023, a pier may provide for an additional attraction that could increase visitation. However, outlined in the pier feasibility study, further discussion is needed regarding the ownership and partnerships, interests, and responsibilities to move the project forward. The testimony also referenced ongoing operating costs, including repair and maintenance over the lifespan of the pier, which is important because the impact of winter storms on our seacoast facilities. The proposed appropriation is less than half of the estimated cost to construct the pier that we had in the feasibility study. So raising to the senator's question here earlier, to move a project forward for permitting and stuff, full design would need to be in place to be able to move those permitting processes forward. So typically, in a large capital project, the full funding for the scope of the project needs to be in place before we start to move forward with permitting and so forth. So design and engineering funding could be appropriated upfront to start that process, and then through the design and engineering effort, all of the permitting processes would be identified during that point in time. But typically, the process would require full funding identified before the DNCR would initiate a project of this scale. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
From the senators. Senator Rosenblum.
Do I remember correctly that 2 years ago when we last talked about this, you said a better spot would be north of Hampton Beach?
No, well, in the pier feasibility study, there was 3 primary locations that were looked at. So it was they were all at the south of Boar's Head, on the main part of Hampton Beach. So the first one was immediately south of Boar's Head. I believe many of the folks that were looking at that thought that was not a great place to put it, and there was a lot of constraints relative to the parking and other amenities where the road is kind of narrow at that point. The second location was right in the very center of the beach, effectively coming straight off the Seashell complex. While that certainly looks could have a look there, one of our primary concerns is that it is one of the busiest areas of the beach, and in putting a pier in, there's swimming limitations within the boundary of a pier to either side of it that couldn't take place. Obviously, if people are fishing and things like that, you can't have that mixed use happening all in that concentrated area. So we weren't sure that really made sense. And so by sort of the process of deduction, that the South Beach area at the state park near where the current jetty is located seemed to be the most viable option. That is an area where we do have the piping plovers as a nesting activity, and that's an annual occurrence there. Some of the other mentions earlier of sea level rise and other constraints. What I can say is that area of the park is extremely exposed and vulnerable. The Army Corps of Engineers just over the last year have been working on reconstructing the jetty. They're installing 6,000-pound rocks that just get shifted around every winter. So a location of a pier in that immediate area would need to be, I think, very robust and large to be able to hold up to what Mother Nature puts out there each winter season. Not to say that it could not be done, but that seems like to our department as the most viable location within the park to do something like this.
Additional questions from senators? Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So not only the Army Corps of Engineers, but wouldn't this also be governed by the existing state statute of the Science and Technical Advisory Panel's projections of sea level rise in that area?
What I would say is that, yes, I mean, our capital budget appropriations are, and we work very closely with the Hampton Beach Area Commission. There's been a lot of study, both at the local level in the town of Hampton, and regionally throughout the Seacoast relative to risk mitigation and other strategies. So, again, while you can design and engineer and build anything, really, we would be concerned about its longevity and its viability, one, and further, maintenance and funding. If it's not clear whether the expectation is that the state park fund, which is entirely self-funded for operating, would be required for additional maintenance costs of this. Our capital requests is large for our current infrastructure across the park system. So our priorities are generally in other areas of maintaining our existing infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Additional questions from the senators? Seeing none. Thank you very much. That is the last person on the list who signed up to speak. There was one additional person who signed up. Oh, do we have more people?
Nope, sorry, this was the next one, my bad.
Okay. There was one person who did sign up, but did not wish to speak. They are in opposition. And the people who signed up online, there was one in support and 5 in opposition.
Mr. Chair, I thought I had signed up.
You are on there, but you're not checked. Come on forward. Check the box for him to speak. No. Representative Munson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for members of the committee. For the record, my name is Chris Munns. I'm one of the 4 state representatives from Rockingham District 29 representing the town of Hampton. I appeared before this committee 2 years ago when you were hearing SB 122. It's good to be back with you. That bill was introduced following the completion of a $150,000 feasibility and impact study authorized in 2022 under SB 346. When I came before you in January of 2023, I said I wanted to provide you with the perspective of someone who has lived in Hampton, 3 miles down Ocean Boulevard from the main beach, year-round for the past 28 years. The project SB 122 and now SB 241 proposes to appropriate funds for is quite frankly a mystery to most of my constituents. It is something they have neither asked for or quite frankly are interested in. The majority of the residents of Hampton who do know about it are opposed to it. It is not necessary, and they are concerned about what it will do to traffic and to the already difficult task of finding parking at the beach. Our concerns are greatest with regard to the proposed location at the north end of the main beach, the one closest to Boar's Head. That location is in front of mostly residential properties, far away from the main entertainment and businesses along the beach, and is exactly where the plovers nest each year. Those of us who live in Hampton year-round are also very concerned about the additional burden a pier would place on our existing hard roads, wastewater and water systems, and soft police and fire infrastructure. The taxpayers of Hampton are already absorbing a greater share of the costs associated with visitors to the Hampton Beach State Park than the share of state revenues we are receiving. We would want to be assured that when those costs go up if a pier is constructed, we will be appropriately compensated. Following the public hearing on SB 122, this committee saw fit to reduce the proposed appropriation from $22 million to $2 million. That proposal, wisely, in my opinion, was laid on the table. Nevertheless, $150,000 for an additional study performed by the same consultant who had prepared the initial feasibility study was included in the budget approved in June of 2023. The bill before you today, SB 241, would now allocate an additional $12 million for a project that the just completed study characterizes as an accessibility improvement that is high cost with moderate public support that has physical environmental impact and moderate connection with other facilities. In short, a project that is nowhere ready for prime time. If the goal is to improve accessibility for individuals with disabilities, which I applaud, there are more cost-effective and visitor-friendly ways to do that. I sit on House Finance, and as we work with you to craft a budget for the next biennium, we're going to have to make many difficult decisions between must-haves and nice-to-haves. We have already spent $300,000 with a consulting firm working out of Portland, Maine, on one of those nice-to-haves. We should not spend any more money on it. However, if you do believe that we can find an extra $12 million in our state budget to invest in Hampton, then selfishly, my strong preference and recommendation would be that we do so to address the significant flooding issues that so many of my constituents who live in the Hampton Harbor area experience every time there is a storm or an unusually high tide. If, however, we want to restrict that investment to our state park system, then the most prudent and fiscally responsible thing to do would be to use this money to help replace the Cannon Mountain Tramway. The estimated cost of that project is about $25 million, and the $12 million proposed for a pier that nobody really wants would be of tremendous help to that project. It will protect a significant source of year-round revenue for our state park system at one of our state's top tourist destinations. While a pier, if properly sited and constructed, and if the interests of the residents of Hampton are protected, would be a nice addition to the Hampton Beach State Park, we have other more pressing priorities that should be addressed first. Thank you for your time, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Senators, do you have questions for the representative? Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Representative Munn, for taking my question. So New Hampshire has 13 miles of coastline.
Yep.
Right? If we go down to Salisbury, there's a pier there where disabled citizens can go out over the water, and not just at the beach, but actually go over the water and see. And if we go north, I think the next closest one is probably Old Orchard Beach, or up that way, where disabled citizens can go out over the beach. In our 13 miles, is there any way a disabled citizen, a New Hampshire citizen, could actually get over the water versus just to the edge of the water?
There is no way that I know of where they can get over the water, but I think with a little bit of creativity and a little bit of funding, we can certainly improve their access to get to the edge of the water.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we've already read that there was 1 in support and 5 in opposed online. And now everyone has spoke that signed in. And with that, we will close the public hearing and open the next one in just a minute. All right, and with that, we will open the public hearing on Senate Bill 242 and ask, I was looking for your name on the co-sponsor list there.
Nope.
Senator, introduce yourself in the bill, please.
For the record, my name is Regina Birdsall, State Senator for District 19, which encompasses the towns of Derry, Hampstead, and Windham. And I'm here on behalf of Senator Bill Gannon to present Senate Bill 242 FN. This bill establishes a cost of living adjustment in 2025 to be paid by the retirement system on the first $50,000 of a retired Group 2 members or beneficiaries' allowance. The cost of this supplemental allowance is paid from the state general fund. And Senator Gannon did want me to let you know that he is extremely concerned of the in excess of $98 million cost to the system. So, and he does not want it to move forward.
Okay. Questions from the senators? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. And you do have a question, all right?
About, well,
It's not my,
was anybody else signed up to speak? Was anybody else signed up to speak?
Yes, there
Oh,
are
okay.
3 people.
they're allowed to speak.
Okay.
Who signed up
I'll
to
hold
speak.
it.
All right,
And this was Senator Gannon's request.
Arthur, I think. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Arthur Beaudry. I represent the New Hampshire State Permanent Firefighters Retirement Association. I am a retired captain from the Manchester Fire Department and a past trustee of the New Hampshire Retirement System for 13 years. I am here today in support of Senate Bill 242, which would grant a COLA to our senior retirees who have been retired for over 10 years to 20 years. For those of you that may not know the history of granting of COLAs,
Arthur?
yes.
I note here that you've got 3 pages of testimony.
I'm not, no, that's just, I'm not going to be talking through all that.
Okay.
I timed this, Mr. Chairman, and it was about 3 minutes.
All right, you got 3 minutes.
All right.
The clock right up there.
You got it. It is a lot of information, though. For the, let's see, prior to the establishment of the special account in 1983, to fund cost of living adjustments, the cost of living COLA was granted by the legislature and funded through the general fund from 1967 to 1983. From 1983 to 2012, annual COLAs were granted based on the availability to them through the special account. The COLA amount ranged from 1% to 5% based on the CPIU and funds available in the member group account. In 2007, House Bill 653 changed the funding trigger as of June 30th, 2007 for the special account and retained $204 million in the corpus of the fund that would have gone to the special account. In 2008, House Bill 1645 transferred $250 million from the special account to the corpus of the fund. 2011, House Bill 2 transferred $167 million from the special account to the corpus of the fund. And in 2012, they eliminated the special account under House Bill 1483, and the remaining $16 million was transferred from the special account to the corpus of the fund. The elimination of the special account and the transfer of $637 million from the special account to the corpus of the fund have precluded any further COLAs from being granted to the New Hampshire Retirement System retirees unless enabling legislation is enacted. Retirees have received 1 COLA since 2010. It was a 1.5% cost of living raise, capped at the first $50,000. Over the last decade, the cost of living based on the CPIU has gone up 28.4%, while COLAs granted to Group 2 police and firefighters over the same time period was 1.5%. Over the last 20 years, the cost of living has gone up by 51.85%, while COLAs granted to Group 2 police and firefighters over the same time period was 7.75%, respectively. That is over 44% of the pensioners' buying power has been eliminated due to inflation and the lack of adequate COLAs. The past $500 stipend that went predominantly to Group 1, out of the $11.6 million fiscal note, Group 1 received $10.75 million of that, over 92% of the $11.6 million. Social Security, on average, increased by 2.62% a year over the last 20 years, totaling 52.3%. Unfortunately, not like Group 1, Group 2 police and firefighters do not receive Social Security. Under the Windfall Act of 1984, if a member were to be eligible for Social Security, their benefits would be reduced by 40% at minimum and as much as 90% depending on their pension. Predominantly, the New Hampshire Retirement System Group 2 members rely on the retirement system income. I'm going to just, sake of time, go to the handouts, if you would. If you look at the handouts that I handed out, the first one shows what a $30,000 pension under the retirement system with the COLAs that have been granted over the last 20 years would have ended up with. So after 20 years, a $30,000 pension in the New Hampshire retirement system for police and fire would be $32,373. And if you look at the second page that I handed out, that is what the CPI was over that same time period, 20 years. And a pension based on the CPIU for police and fire would have been $49,805. So if you look at what the retirement system had offered, through the retirement system, $32,373, that's $17,432,000 difference that a member should have been getting in their retirement and have not. And I put in Social Security just so you can see the difference, what Group 1 would be receiving also. This is over and above what they would be getting for their retirement. And Social Security over the same 20 years would have been $50,051. That's a difference of $17,834. So again, there has to be a differentiation between Group 2 and Group 1 because of Social Security. And if you look at the handout again that I gave, it does show, and it's a good read. I'm not going to read it all today, but it is a good read. And what a cost of living, how it affects a retiree. A $2,000 pension, basically over 20 years, ends up to be $937, the value of it, over 20 years without a cost of living raise. So this is what's happening to us with the lack of COLAs. And I know there's going to be some funding somehow to fund these COLAs, but to just say we're not going to give one, retirees have been waiting, and the evidence is very clear. It's hurting us. So with that, I will take any questions, and I hope I was within my 3 minutes.
No, but.
No? Thank you.
Questions from the senators? In your testimony, you did not speak to what the unfunded liability for the state retirement system is.
I did not. It's $5 billion. And that there is a mechanism that to get that paid up by, I believe it's 2039, that should be paid up. And when it is, the normal rate for police and fire is less than paying into Social Security.
And the other thing that you didn't say is how much the cost of living would affect that unfunded liability.
Well, the cost of the bill is $90 million. If the state is going to, if the state picks it up, it's no cost to the unfunded. If the state is going to put it to the retirement system, then that unfunded, but they have tiers now of unfunded. I know you know this, that the first tier is going to be paid off in 2039. This legislation would be a second tier for 20 years to be paid off.
I understand all of that, but
Okay.
again, you know, well, we'll discuss that when we get to.
I appreciate that, but you can't, I just,
Yes,
it
I
seems like the
can.
retirees are being held hostage over this unfunded accrued liability. I mean, we're retired, we have to live, and there was an obligation from the retirement system and the legislature from the inception in 1967 that COLAs were going to be granted. And then all of a sudden, it evaporated.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you now. There's two other people who did mark that they were signing off. It looks like Mark Kavanaugh. And maybe Mark is Marty's replacement, I don't know.
Interim.
Interim replacement.
For a permanent replacement. So I've been
Okay, well.
shanghaied into filling in for him, along with the help of Diana Crichton, another attorney sitting back there. Just for the record, Mr. Chair, my name is Mark Kavanaugh. I'm a Deputy Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer for the New Hampshire Retirement System. And we take no position for or against this bill. It's wholly a policy decision to be made by the legislature. We just, in an abundance of caution, want to point out there's another COLA bill in the House that would cover Group 1 and Group 2s. It has a different cost than this. It's a lesser benefit, has, I think it's 1.5% for people who had 5 years or more. But we just want to be cautious that we don't pass both bills. But we trust you folks to figure that out in conference.
All right.
But I would be here to answer any questions as well.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Sandra.
So I just want to make sure I understand Roman 3, that starts on line 23.
Mm-hmm.
So the COLA then becomes part of the base pension as well?
Correct.
Okay.
So as opposed to a temporary supplemental allowance, which is
Except
usually like
not
a
just one
$500
time.
check you get once, this is an X% increase that's reflected going forward.
Thank you.
And that's what adds to the present value cost.
And again,
Senator Lang.
to be clear, the way I read this, this becomes, again, a permanent ongoing liability going every year forward.
Correct, so if someone as a result of this received an extra $750, it'll be $750 every year for the rest of their life.
So that $100 million they're talking about in the fiscal note is an ongoing $100 million expense to the state?
No, that's the present value of all the future obligations. So the actuaries will go out 20, 30 years and say, what is this addition to everyone's benefit? Discount it back, use it using a discount rate to the current cost. So this is the current cost to terminally fund all of the benefit for the future as well.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
John McAllister.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gray, and the honorable members of the committee. For the record, my name is John McAllister. I'm the professional firefighter, Secretary Treasurer for the Professional Firefighters of New Hampshire, and a 25-year member of the City of Nashville Fire Department. I'm here today to ask for this committee's support for Senate Bill 242. Our retirees work a noble public service career for 25 plus years, working public service jobs in return for a livable wage in retirement. But as the cost of living throughout the country continues to rise, these members continue to fall behind. Many New Hampshire retirees continue to live in the state of New Hampshire once they retire. They continue to pay their property taxes, they continue to take vacations, and they continue to invest in their money in the state of New Hampshire. The National Institute on Retirement Security provides an economic profile for each state across the country. In 2021, the NIRS research concluded that for every dollar of taxpayer contributions through the employer rates, a net of $6.10 of economic impact is made back to the New Hampshire economy. In addition to supporting the New Hampshire economy, from the 38,352 pensions in the state, we saw $210.4 million paid in federal, state, and local property taxes. Our retirees are continuing to pay their fair share. It's the state's responsibility to reward these members who have provided a lifetime of dedicated service to the state of New Hampshire and their public local fire departments, police departments, etc., a sense of dignity and a livable retirement wage when they retire. For these reasons, I ask the committee to support Senate Bill 242. The PFNH has also submitted written testimony as well, which I had handed out. Thank you for allowing me to represent the thousands of retired New Hampshire firefighters, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Senators, do you have any questions? None? Thank you very much. In addition to those that speak, there are two other people who signed in, one in support and one opposed, and online there were 7 support, 11 opposed. And with that, we will close the public hearing. And do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We are in executive session. taking out your list of bills that we previously heard, I want to go to Senate Bill 114. Senator Rosenwald moves OTP. And seconded by Senator Lang.
And let's move amendment 0296S.
And we have a motion on 0296S, also given by Senator Rosenwald, seconded by Senator Lang. Discussion?
So, should I explain it?
You can do whatever you want.
Okay,
You
it's a
have the
really
mic.
simple amendment. It adds one sentence into section 1, and that's on line 6. It says, said sum shall be non-lapsing. That's all it does.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. To nothing.
Move on to pass as amended.
Second.
We've already got the motion, Senator Rosenwald, Senator Lang. Okay, further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and because it will be tabled, we will not put it on consent.
Would you like me to take it out?
You would like to take it out, Senator
I'd love to
Rosenwald?
take it out.
You can take it out. All right. Next bill on our list is Senate Bill 115.
Second.
Senator Birdsell moves off to pass. Was that Senator Lang or Senator Rosenwald I heard? Senator Rosenwald seconded it. Okay. All right. Senator Rosenwald, you want to offer your
I
amendment?
do. It's 0341S, and I'd like to thank Senator Lang for working on this with me. This is something we've done before in this committee on extending drinking water infrastructure, which is to make sure that ratepayers in towns, and in this case, it's particularly Londonderry and Derry, who the infrastructure is passing through their town, but they're not getting the service, that they will not see their water rates increase. That it would only be for the new connections, which I think are in Salem, Atkinson, Plastow, and Wyndham, would have to pay for this. So the additional language starts at the very end of line 10 and says, no current public utility ratepayer shall be adversely affected by any direct or indirect costs to bring drinking water to communities receiving new services through any projects funded by this appropriation. So it's just belt and suspenders to make sure that people where it's passing through are not getting their water rates to go up.
All right, Senator Rosen.
We have a second, but I would second that if we did.
Yep, that's why I was. Okay, so Senator Rosenwald moves Amendment 0341S, seconded by Senator Pearl. Further discussion?
I hope it's going on the table.
My plan was to put it on the table. Yes, Senator, it was.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're voting on the amendment right now. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, 6-0. Okay, now we're voting on the bill as amended. Okay, further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
I'll take it out.
And Senator Birdsell will take this one out.
Because your people are not going to pay more.
Exactly.
And I will make the tabling motion. All right. The next one on the list is Senate Bill 116.
Move on to pass.
Senator Birdsell moves ought to pass. All right, and
Mr. Chair, just one thing. I'm going to vote out of pass with this bill. However, just know I hope it's really down on the list and make sure we take care of all the other funding priorities in the state. That this is, to a certain extent, a problem of their own making that I'm willing to help them address as long as we can take care of all the state needs.
And I will second that motion. So I'll get with you in just a second, Senator. Certainly, you know, the way that the original agreement was crafted left a lot to be desired, and that people who originally said they were going to sign up and help pay for that infrastructure were then somehow not obligated to pay for that infrastructure, and they left other people. So this, again, with me, will also be low on my priority list to fund, but it's not that we shouldn't at least help them some way. Senator Waters, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with the sentiment. And I just wanted to note publicly what I had sent you by email that we didn't hear in the hearing, but I heard, because I'm a member of the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund, that there had been a grant from the trust fund for this project, but that now, because of information DES has received about the decline of members in this group down to 37, that there is no longer any belief that this group can pay back as they must under the terms of the money from the Drinking Water Trust Fund, so that grant is going to be withdrawn. I think that it compounds what the chairman has said about the issues here, about how this was done. I know we all try to help our districts. It does seem that it's kind of a bailout, and boy, we open this door. There's a lot of projects I'd like to bail out in my district too. But anyways, I can vote for it just because we help each other out. But I was concerned that we had not been informed in the hearing about that fact of the withdrawal of the other grant funds, which seem to have precipitated this bill in the first place.
Parliamentary procedure, the passing table would still allow the sponsor of this bill to come back in next year, because we would not have voted against the concept.
Yeah, which is good. Yeah.
Senator Pearl and then Senator Birdsell.
I'm going to follow the sage advice of our chairman and not repeat testimony and just say ditto.
Okay, Senator Birdsell.
Did they know when they came to testify last week that it was pulled?
I can't speak for them, but I know, since the recommendation to pull that the funding from the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund came from DES.
Right.
And that was prior to this hearing, that notice on the agenda for the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund. So from that, I would assume they did.
I will let Senator Innes know that. I'm not sure he knew that.
I mean, in a way, and if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
the way it's kind of moved. I don't mean to complain and so on, but it's just that, because I only happen to know that because I was on that group, and I just thought it would be relevant. We'd probably be taking the same vote anyways, but I do think it's important for us to have information before us.
Grant does have some information.
Grant, would you sit down and feed us the information?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Grant Bosse, Deputy Chief of Staff for the New Hampshire Senate. Senator Waters is almost right. And I just wanted to make sure you had precise information. The Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund Advisory Committee had given a grant to this system for new improvements. They're concerned that the legacy debt that the bill would address is a problem, and we're going to recommend rescinding that grant. So if you take care of the legacy debt, the existing grant that's already been approved might be able to go through. Again, I'm not telling you that's a good use of your money. Your senators, you get to decide that. But the reason the grant was recommended to be taken back is because of this legacy debt that Senator Ennis is trying to eliminate and leave the system in better shape. The grant is for new improvements to the system. This bill is about old improvements to the system that are being paid off.
All right. Come on. The department would like to weigh in.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Brendan Kernan. I'm the administrator of the Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau at DES. And I just want to clarify one point. The funding that staff recommended not be offered to the village district was actually going to be another loan for a new well. And based on their perceived ability to repay, based on their water rates being so high, the decline in water users, that there's other mitigating activities that could occur in the water system that help with their water quantity issue without adding to the debt they had. If they were going to seek funding, they probably should seek a grant because, in our opinion, increasing the rates even more with another loan isn't probably a good path forward. And we don't necessarily think the funding they needed for a new well was a necessary activity where there's other lower hanging fruit they could pursue.
The question that I would have in this whole situation is the question of litigation, okay? Whether or not this drinking water fund could go into bankruptcy, whether or not there is or legal precedence to go after the people who have already withdrawn from the fund, you know, to mitigate. And there's so many legal questions out there that I don't believe were answered in the hearing, that there's no way that I can put this any higher than quite low on the priority list. And knowing how much money we have to spend, and Ways and Means is going to confirm that in a couple of months, I don't see it getting funded this year. So something has to happen, but for that to happen, there's a whole bunch of people out there that set this up in the beginning. And, you know, even though somebody has withdrawn from it, the reason it was set up is because the aggregate of those people were going to fund this thing. And so I appreciate what you said, but, you know, where in there is, you know, state of New Hampshire ever said that they were going to guarantee this? And I didn't hear that either. So any other questions for the department? All right, thank you. So with that, we have an OTP motion, Senator Birdsell and Senator Rosenbaum. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And
I would let Senator Ennis take it out.
Yes, please.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea.
It's his bill.
Senator Ennis.
Not in the room.
Senator Ennis is
learn
going
that
to
in
take
the
it out,
military
and
all the
I will
time.
make the tabling motion.
Just a point of order, I don't know that Senator Ennis can take the bill out where he didn't vote on it. I'm not certain he can do that.
I don't remember anything in Senate rules that says that I have to do that. So if there is a provision in Senate rules that says he can't take it out,
I'll take it out.
then Senator Birdsell will take it out.
All right.
I'm doing everybody's dirty work today.
Just want to make sure we didn't make a mistake.
I was going to say that I would take it out, Senator, but you were too quick for me. You were too quick for me. The next bill on the list is Senate Bill 117.
I move ODP on Senate Bill 117.
Okay. Senator Lang and Senator Rosenbaum, OTP. Senator Lang, you have another motion?
Sure, I'd move that we adopt Senator Waters' Amendment 322S.
322S.
I would say.
And Lang and Pearl. That's close enough. You know,
I wondered in terms of order of the sequence of amendments, whether we because Senator Rosenwald's amendment incorporates this language that adds some other things, that how would you like to proceed?
Well, right now, I'm kind of stuck. That certainly, certain people on this committee support the Amendment 0322S and would like to see that one pass. Right now, that is the first one we're going to consider. If someone else would like to make a motion to further amend 0322S, then that would be in order at this time. Yes.
So again, so first section of the amendment strikes the tutor.com. Thank you. First part of the amendment strikes the tutor.com out of the bill, leaves the rest of the bill intact the way it was. The second half was a good recommendation to add some reporting requirements for DOE on who's using the service, how many students, that kind of thing. So this bill incorporates those two changes that were spoken about in the original hearing, and that's why I chose 322 over 308.
Okay. When education does come in, I want to interrogate them on why this program, or with a different vendor possibly, isn't going forward. If it was producing results of helping our students get over the COVID dip, then why won't it help us, go forward and make a bump up? But we'll do that during the hearings when the Education Department comes in to speak before us. And we may be surprised, we may see something in the governor's budget, but I would not hold your breath. Okay, further discussion on the amendment, 0322S. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And now the bill as amended. Further discussion?
Yes, I'd like to offer amendment 0390S. 0309S. Okay. You have a second. Thank you. So I spoke with Senator Innes about this, and he was fine with it. I spoke with the lobbyist for the company, who didn't see any issue with it. This program was originally competitively bid, but the department now has options to just renew it twice more. My concern is that the website clearly states that it is controlled by principals living in Hong Kong. And I know that's been a concern of yours, Madam Leader. I think apparently the ownership structure of this company may change, but I think it's better governance to competitively bid for projects. We don't know anything about how it's doing. And let's see if we can find someone to come in with a lower bid or with a better program. And that is why I offer it.
Senator Lang.
So again, I think in the original 322 amendment, that language, so the language we're looking at is starting on line 5 of 309 and ending 3/4 of the way through on line 6 with the word of this paragraph. Nothing in 322 stops the Department of Education to go out and put it out for bid if they choose to. It just says that we're going to be funding the online program. If they think it's in their best interest, they can do that. But by doing this language, it requires them to do it. And I didn't want to require them to go out and do another bid if they have a project that's working for them. If they don't feel the need to change it, then why would we incur the cost of creating a whole nother RFP process I just, the shall in there was the one that caused me some issue and why I didn't look at 309 and instead supported 322.
Additional comments?
Yes, well,
Senator?
I mean, the department has really no idea if it's working because there's no data on it at all. And in fact, the first report won't be until a year and 5 months from now. So I just think it's better government to competitively bid. Senator Innes was on board with this amendment. He is not here, sadly, but he thought it was appropriate.
And again, we're not changing appropriation rules in here. So the rules about competitive bids and stuff do not change. When they started the system originally, I believe that the testimony was that it was competitively bid at that time. So I would, no matter whether we include the language of 0309S in here or not, I don't expect that to change. You know, in reviewing the bills, I believed that the bill that, or I should say the amendment that we did pass so far, you know, was sufficient. So I'm not inclined to include 0309 now. And again, this is going to be another passing table, so the comments about quizzing the Department of Ed, because that will certainly have a major impact on my decision of where I would like to see it on the priority list, and hopefully on your decision of where we should be on the priority list.
Could I just say one more thing?
You can say
Thank you.
anything you want, Senator,
as
as long as you stay within the rules.
As you recall from the public hearing, this program was not a prioritized need from the Department of
Amen.
Education. And so I don't think they're going to be spending a lot of time if we don't ask them to go out to bid. If we think this program's important, I don't think they're going to spend the time to go out and rebid it if they're not even that interested in it.
Depending upon their enthusiasm or lack thereof of this program when they come in, we'll make the appropriate budget decisions at that time. And they may not have, or they may decide that the current bid, you know, has an extension on it that they can do, and it'll be $1 million, or they can rebid it, and that's all covered in other procedures. So, Senator Birdsall, I saw you looking for your button.
So even if we pass this as is, it's going to be on the list. And once the department comes in and discusses, we can always add the language to require them to do a competitive bid if they are planning even on supporting this.
Well, we could, or we could pass it with this language and then remove it.
Right now, on my list, I don't even have a second yet on the amendment.
Oh,
I'm
Senator
sure.
Waters did.
Senator Waters, all right. Okay, well, I'm slow, I'm sorry. I'll get better, or worse. Further discussion on the amendment 0309S. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay. And we are,
We don't 309.
I'm sorry.
it fails for, right, I guess. Yeah.
Can we reconsider? I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong number. Huh? Oh.
If you would like to reconsider your vote, I'm perfectly,
It'd be a 3-3 vote, still fails.
I know. Never mind.
okay. So,
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
now we're back to ought to pass as amended by 0322S. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And we're at 5-1. And Senator Lang will take it out. And it won't go on the table. I mean, it won't, right, it won't go on consent because it'll be tabled.
We should make Senator Innes take this one out too, it's his.
Yeah, but that means Senator Bertzel's gonna get the other one too. Anyway, the last one on the old list was 239 FN, the general fund to cover the cost of fish and game. Okay.
I'll move amendment 234. Second pass.
Oh, 234S. Okay, discussion.
I'll give.
Senator Rosenbaum.
I'm going to vote for this, but I have real concerns about the department's ability to continue to be self-funded. And either we're giving them too much work and they can't make enough on licensing fees and federal money, or they're going to have to restructure their fees because they're supposed to be self-funded. There's no other self-funded department that comes and asks for general funds, only this one. And I understand the House is working hard in finance on Fish and Game, and I'm looking forward to what they say.
And I am also looking forward to what the governor's decided to do in this issue, and we will certainly be influenced by the House. I'm sure that the colonel will be back, when the budget is presented, and he'll tell us, how hard it's going to be or how impossible it's going to be to do the things that we want him to do with the funding that we provide. All right. With
Mr.
that,
Chair,
Senator Pearl.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Well, I just want to say I'm going to support this, and I agree with all the things that both of you have said. It's important. We have a department where we've put a lot of extra tasks upon them. We expect them to be self-funded, but because of some situations, especially with the AOT permits that they didn't bring upon themselves, that we've asked them to do things that they've had no mechanism to get funding for, yet we're requiring them to do work. So I think this is an important step forward. In the end, this may not be exactly what it looks like and how we fund the department because of all the things that we just talked about, but I think it's important that we recognize we need to do something different than what we have been because it's not working. So I will be supporting the amendment.
Okay, and I'll remind the department that, we wouldn't mind getting a status of the computer system that it's required in HB2 from the last time that tells us about registration of snowmobiles, et cetera.
September 1st of this year.
Hey, that's why I'm trying to slip it in. They stayed, so, they're fair game, so. Pun intended. Pun intended. All right, before us, we have a motion on Amendment 0234S. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. And 6-0. Now we're at the bill as amended. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the bill as amended say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And Senator Pearl would like to take this one out. And I'll make the tabling motion. All right, back to the bills that we heard today. Now, on these, I'm not necessarily looking for a motion, but at least to give you a chance to talk about them, and then if it seems that there is some kind of consensus, then we will certainly. Senator Waters.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on 238, I wasn't sure I quite understood what we were being told about a need for some clarification on line 13. And did others understand what that was about? I mean, was she saying, this is why we do it, because we allocate the organizations and that helps us avoid costs to that? Or should you say that that needed to be changed? And I just couldn't understand what there was, and I don't know enough about this area.
Isn't this one that we're waiting for the amendment on?
There was suggestion that the amendment would come.
Yeah,
that would,
okay.
Drop it down
change
to
the cost.
150.
All right.
And so.
Well, fine. I was confused about it. I didn't know if maybe that's what the amendment will clear, but I just didn't understand what we're being told about line 13, so thank you. We'll
Again,
see.
you know, just
They contract directly with the FRC.
not necessarily looking for action or motions on these, just trying to give us an opportunity to speak on them. All right, so as far as I know, Senator Long has the action out there, and he's going to get with somebody on the committee, hopefully, to do that. The next one on the list is 241.
So I'll work with Senator Avard to see what amendment to deal with lowering the appropriation request and changing the line.
One thing that came to mind on this is that if the appropriation is put out, you know, even to 2028, and that to get the appropriation, they need to have matching funds already deposited or something like that, so that we, you know, they demonstrate that, you know, there's an ability to raise funds. I mean, you know, I'm thinking off the wall, but doing that would keep it out of this budget. It would keep it alive for some, but then you also have the testimony of the people who represent the area. You know, when talking about fishing and different things, certainly the bridges in Portsmouth are all salt water, tidal waters, and I can tell you that for 28 years I drove across those bridges to get to the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, and there are an awful lot of people who do try to fish, and that, you know, doing something down in that harbor would be a lot easier, a lot more cost effective, I believe, instead of being down at Hampton Beach. Hampton Beach has other things, but if I'm really trying to fish, I think that we can do it in other places. But that being said, you know, Senator Waters.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what you're saying. And I think my recommendation would be just the paragraph that sets up the fund. And that lets them get to work on it. I was concerned when I heard from DES saying that, no, as a matter of fact, you can't start permitting until you not only have the full engineering plan, but you also have the full funding committed. And so I can't see at this point a need to put any funding in at all. But if we put the funding mechanism, it is essentially a way of keeping it, keeping the project viable for that kind of fundraising. Anyways, but I hear your plan too, Mr. Chairman, about just putting it out a decade, or not, a few years from now, and we'll see. But anyways, I think the first paragraph, why not let them set up a fund?
As part of the Dedicated Funds Review Committee that I've been on for years and years and years, there are an awful lot of dedicated funds that we have set up.
Yep.
And said, oh, we're going to fund this with donations.
Yeah.
Donations don't come. All right. You know, if I'm looking at disabled people, Disabled housing is probably higher on my list than a pier. If I'm looking at disabled people, the funding to pay for the caregivers that they need and making sure that there is a living wage for those caregivers and that we can get them is higher on my priority needs. And I can go on, okay, on things that I can do for the disabled that would be higher on my priority list to spend the money than the pier. So, you know, kind of from that, you know, where I would put this if it is passed and tabled on the priority list. But right now, the notes that I have is that Senator Lang is to work with Senator Avard. Okay? Moving along. Senate Bill 242. The prime sponsor no longer wants to be the prime sponsor. Unless anyone on this committee wants to adopt this bill and take it over, then I'm going to recommend that it get a motion of re-refer, and then that re-refer motion be tabled so that you're not voting in favor or against it, but voting for the re-refer motion.
So, oh, go ahead.
No.
So I mean, I'm not going to adopt that bill, but what I was thinking is, in the past, if there's the money in there, this is a recurring COLA. In the past, if we've had the money, we've done a one-time payment. I know it's least likely we're going to have some money, but
one of the points that the first gentleman that spoke from the New Hampshire Professional Firefighters was that these COLAs have gone mostly to the Group 1 people and not the Group 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true, because we've put limitations on the pension that said we're only going to pay this COLA for the people who earn up to, and so that's true. But those are also the people who would be most in need of this money, okay? You know, I look at the firefighters in Rochester and the different ones, and I know that many of them have second employment. I know a captain in Rochester that works on tree service. I know another guy that used to be the inspector for Rochester, that he had a business with fire extinguishers. I looked at a lot of the other people, so that a lot of these people, you know, I feel for them. You know, I'd love to give them more money, but the question is where do they fall in that set of priorities? Senator Lang.
I make a recommendation, we don't take a vote on this. We're gonna see the budget, and I absolutely guarantee there's gonna be something in the budget about Group 2. Maybe we should take a peek at what that looks like before we make a determination on this.
So I have a recommendation to hold till after Thursday.
Yep.
That sounds like a good idea.
And that being said, what else have you guys got? I'm going through the FN report right now for stuff I can waive, so there's a few things in there, LBA, I need your help with, because people haven't turned in their FM reports. I'll tell you so that you can tell anybody that doesn't fill one out that I am going to hold a hearing, and I am going to request that that department be here and testify to the FN report, or give me the FN report. And I think that they'll certainly find that's a lot easier and cheaper on their time and effort if they actually fill out the reports. Okay? There is one other one I need you guys to look at, and that was Senate Bill 71, to see if I have the most recent report on the FN report and what the cost is, because that's the one that I took out of certain bills, because at the time, I saw a cost of $130,000 plus or minus for a new person and $100,000 for other costs, and people now are telling me that those numbers have either disappeared or gone away, but I do want those before I make the,
Oh, it's on the floor on Thursday.
yeah, before I speak to it on the floor. So that's separate from the other ones. But again, telling the departments that, in these FN reports, that if they don't get them to me, whether the bill passes or not, they're gonna be scheduled to come in and testify. I ought to at least help them do something. Well, the more they ingratiate themselves with this committee, the happier we'll be and the happier they'll be.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, we actually have to have a motion. We actually have to have a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Our business today being complete, we are adjourned.